As we head into November, there's no doubt now that autumn is well and truly here. The last heat in the sun, all but gone, replaced instead with chilly nights, misty mornings, increasingly shorter days that never seem to truly get bright. And in today's video, I want to ask 3 questions. Firstly, can you truly have a tropical style jungle or exotic garden here in the UK that looks just as magnificent, spectacular in the middle of winter as it does in summer? Secondly, if you do grow that kind of garden, full of the hardy evergreen exotics you see behind me, are they really tough enough to survive in the coldest, snowiest, harshest cities in our northern parts? And thirdly, if you do plant them and grow them in those places, if you went full jungle, what would that garden look like after 30 years? Today's video is a garden visit that I'm incredibly excited to share with you. A garden I've wanted to see and a garden that I've wanted to meet for quite some time. Today, I'm visiting Dr Simon Olpin in his beautiful Sheffield jungle. There really are some jaw-droppingly impressive plants you'll see today. Some incredible bamboo specimens, Schefflera that tower over you like trees, and a eucalyptus grown from seed that you truly have to see to believe. Simon, I've got to say, incredibly friendly, enthusiastic, full of knowledge that he's keen to share. So I really hope you enjoy this video and feel free to leave your comments in the section below. Let's go into the jungle. So Simon, this is a view straight out the back of your kitchen. I've got to say, it is a full-on jungle. And there's a lot of plants I recognise in here. It's mostly Trachycarpus, bamboo, and big-leaved exotic evergreens, isn't it? Tell me about some of your favourites here. Yeah.
So, as I say, we moved here in 1987 from Cambridge, and reasonably early on I decided that bamboos and Trachycarpus, which were already becoming an interest of mine,
yes,
would be the sort of thing that I would be able to grow and use as a main structural framework for a jungle type garden. So we planted some of these Trachycarpus back in the late 1990s,
yes,
and early 2000s. These waggies here,
this is one of my favourite palms.
From the Palm Centre for £2.50 each.
Yes.
And have grown very well over the last 30 odd years.
£2.50 each, so £7.50.
A good deal, I felt certainly. At the time.
Yes.
And have serviced us very well.
Yeah.
Some of the first trackies we put in, again around 1992.
So about 30 years in the ground, basically, yeah.
The largest one here is the one with a huge trunk, which was bought.
Well, that's a beauty, isn't it? That one.
One of the most I ever spent on a palm. It was about £90 from the Palm Centre, and it's one of the first palms I put in, and it's now got probably, well, there's a good 26 feet, 25 feet of trunk there.
Yes. I've got to say, seeing them in the ground at this size, it completely transforms the feeling of the space, doesn't it? And
yes.
I can imagine when you were first planting these, I've seen that picture of you stood next to your first one. Did you have an idea that they'll be this tall and majestic one day? Or was it very much a journey? No, I like your honesty.
Not at all. As I told a group of very interested visitors, they asked me if I'd planned the garden. I said, yes, of course I did. When I first moved here, I decided we'd have some bamboo over there and some palms over there, and I'd probably put a few eucalyptus at the top, and then I said, no, I didn't really.
No.
It evolved over time, and that's how things are. You plant plants, you decide they're in the wrong place, you decide they're not the plant for you, or the weather kills them.
Exactly, or the weather decides for you, doesn't it?
So it evolves. It's very much an evolutionary process.
Definitely, and I think that's partly why I was so looking forward to coming to meet you and see your garden, because you grow a lot of the same palms like Trachycarpus, the waggies. You grow a lot of the same bamboos that myself, Chris, and my friend Mark grow. But here, they've been in the ground for that long, you can really see what the eventual end game is, can't you?
Yeah.
So could you tell me some more about some of the bamboos in this area?
So here I've had a Phyllostachys nigra. It's probably more of a punk tartar, actually.
Right. Okay.
It hasn't flowered with its present series of flowering as yet. That plant has been there since 1991.
Wow.
It did run out quite a long way, which I cut back again. But it's it's been very well behaved generally.
Generally, yes.
And then to the side of it and right through is Semiarundinaria fastuosa.
I've got to say, it's quite dark in here with all the shade, but that is a
dark,
beautiful bamboo.
And so that's up at about, well, it's certainly up at about 20 feet, isn't it, if not slightly more. That's been there a long time, and probably since about 1994, something like that. And it's slowly migrated from one small plant, so it's got several hundreds of canes now.
Oh, yes,
and
definitely.
It's a really nice, it's actually a good wind barrier for the garden,
I can
for the lower
imagine.
garden. There are Trachycarpus here.
Yes, I want to show
lots
people
of them.
these.
There's
Yes.
about 8 in this area.
Yes.
One was a relatively large plant, bought probably about 18 inches of trunk back in 1991.
Wow.
That's the main trunk there.
Yes, we
and
can see,
then
yeah.
we dug up seedlings from the hillside in around the Italian lakes in Italy in 1988. When we were on our honeymoon,
Yes.
and I grew them on for a couple of years and then planted them out around the base of the original trachea to generate a large plant effect.
Sort of clump effect, yeah, definitely. And I know it can slow the growth of the main plant down, but the overall effect here, and people see this as we head right on into the jungle, it's such a lush, I don't want to use the word naturalistic, but in my eyes, a proper jungle, you know, it's all about these sort of leaves on leaves. There's different heights, there's everything in here, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, subsequently I planted a couple more tracheas around the base as well. So it's a big, huge clump of tracheas.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole range of other plants put in here. I've actually recently started to introduce a bit more flower. So I am very keen on camellias, and also I've got a number of rhododendrons. I dismissed them early on in my planting career, and then have started to reintroduce some small ones to give some colour, and a couple of large leafed ones like Rhododendron singogrande.
Which is the one in here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Courtesy of our mutual friend Shane, that one, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
It's an absolute stunning plant.
I've got a small plant of Rhododendron falconeri, which I've just planted.
Yes.
You can see over the back here there is a Schefflera delavayi, which has been there for a long time, probably 12 years or so, not really been touched by the winters, rather neglected by me. It's only in recent years that it's sort of appeared almost.
It's suddenly grown up, yes.
Yeah, become a plant of some stature.
And I've got to say, everything here just looks so healthy, like the Trachycarpus, the thickness of the trunk, you know, admittedly with all the fibre on, everything's full of leaves. It really is incredible to see this in Sheffield as well. It's amazing.
One of the things I've always believed in is, and increasingly so over recent years, is the importance of the soil. Everything is in the soil. It is a living, breathing organism.
I think this is something we had shared philosophies on, really. It's the soil is, if you look after soil, everything grows. You don't need fertiliser, you need minimal extra water. Plants thrive so much better with the mulching. As we see going through this garden here, you've got some bamboos that have got mulch mounded up around them, haven't they?
I fed the bamboos with, I do give them farmyard manure.
Yes.
But most of the other plants, certainly in recent years, I don't. All I do is all the green material and all the bamboos and all the palm leaves, everything I cut back, I cut down, and there's a lot. I mean, there's probably 400 more palm leaves a year, probably 300 or 400, if not more, bamboo canes a year. I've got a big shredder. I shred everything. I don't compost anything. Just put it straight down on the ground. I put a mulch around the base of some of the tracheas. I'm very careful not to cover the base of
woody plants.
Plants.
No, I understand that.
But you can throw almost anything on bamboo at the base.
Yes, that's exactly what I do. To be fair, it was actually seen in your garden. Was it around 6 or 7 years ago on Gardener's World?
Right.
I remember you saying about using bamboo essentially as a compost heap. So just using lots of these offcuts and bark, and it really helps create a damper, better soil structure, more nutrition. They've got everything they need, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. At one time, we used to think that bark chip was very poor in nutrient, which it is generally. But there is a whole cycle going on within the soil.
Yes.
Recycling nutrients, bringing stuff in from the actual soil structure itself. It's those mycorrhiza, it's those soil bacteria, it's those arcadia, all those all those organisms which are working there,
Yeah.
which are actually taking nutrients and actually working in conjunction with the mycorrhiza to actually channel nutrients to the plants. It's the natural system, which not surprisingly is often the best, because it's had quite a long time to establish.
Yes, I mean, I've made it. It's one of my bizarre objectives to basically do a video every single year on mulch in my garden, because I think it is literally the most important thing you can do, for the health of your garden and the plants. And again, when I visited Ventnor Botanic Garden, they've come under a bit of fire for having a more relaxed approach to gardening and using a lot of mulching and chopping and dropping the various sort of procedures. But I think personally, if you want to create a more lush, again we use the word naturalistic aesthetic, if you want to grow a lot of these exotics, they absolutely thrive on a good, rich, moisture retentive but well draining soil, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this soil, this is obviously bark we brought in.
Oh yeah, this is more of a sort of decorative, isn't it? Yeah. This is a part of your garden close to the house. Yeah.
But the garden is literally, I mean, this area here is nearly 2 feet taller than the edges, and the edges have been mulched as well. So the whole garden generally is at least a foot to 2 feet taller than the other gardens, because it's 30 odd years of continually mulching. The soil, if you go into it, is like a woodland floor, peat based almost, really organic, really rich in invertebrates, and obviously microfauna and flora.
Oh, definitely. And I know people do talk about, bark, for instance, it takes nitrogen to actually break it down, and that's, some people use that as a negative, but I would say the benefits in terms of, like you say, attracting the insects, the fungi, all that life under the soil that comes alive with decaying organic matter, is absolutely worth it, isn't it?
I mean, when you take the best examples of what we have in terms of the world around us, we have to look at nature. We don't create very much ourselves in terms of natural beauty. The history of the forest is that everything that fell in the forest got recycled. The system is honed to generate a good, solid natural fauna and flora within there. That's the way things have evolved over millennia. We interfere, to be honest with you, in many cases are our own, to the disadvantage.
Oh, completely, to make things tidy and these other completely arbitrary objectives that we have for gardens. And in reality, the environments with the fastest growth, so genuine rainforests, are the environments with the fastest turnover of, decaying matter. And to me, your garden, I've seen it in Chris's video, I saw it in Gardener's World, and to me, this view here completely summarises some of the incredible plants that you've chosen for your garden. So straight away over there, that's Schefflera macrophylla, isn't it?
Yeah.
How have you found this to be hardy here in Sheffield? It really is incredible.
It's only been out for about 4 years. And in reality, we've only had about -6 of the coldest in that period of time. I have put a little bit of cover on it. Last winter I did, despite the fact it turned out not to be as cold as was forecast. So I actually built a tent of blankets over it when we'd had 12 inches of snow in March, and I shoveled snow around the base and put a couple of bamboo canes in, 3 blankets over the top, because we had a -9 forecast. Probably unnecessary to do all that, because we only had about a -5.
But then again, a -9 forecast can easily be -11, -12, can't it? So now I completely understand your reservation, but it's a beautiful plant.
So far it does very well, touch wood, and I'm aware of its tenderness, so we'll try and cover it if we have particularly cold weather again. But that's the most tender really around here. This macabeanum has been here for about 12, 13, 14 years for a seedling. That's been fine. Flowers now, only started to flower about the last 3 years. Unfortunately, it's been frosted most years because it flowers so early.
Yes, it's an awkward time, isn't it? Yes, even with your sort of microclimate and huge surrounding vegetation, which we'll look into in more detail shortly. I've got to say, I am also a big fan of the big leaf rhododendrons like the singogrande, and for me, a lot of the exotics that we grow now, they pair so well with, these rhododendrons. Anything with large glossy leaves, preferably evergreen, they just go so well visually together, don't they?
I mean, the natural habitat, of course, would be these are growing in North India up into Nagaland in combination with Scheffleras.
Yes, I mean,
growing in
huge
mixed
Schefflera
deciduous and evergreen woodland, essentially.
This is one of the key reasons why I wanted to come to your garden and see this, splendour in its true glory. It's because you haven't restricted yourself to purely, we'll use air quotes, tropical plants. It's very much a subtropical Himalayan influenced garden, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you grow a lot of the exotics that people watching this video will have heard of, but the way you combine them and the time they've been in the ground really creates a completely different environment and feel, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's just show people, because I can't not show them this. The blue bamboo, which one's this one here?
So this is KR 3698. So it's basically Borinda papyrifera, but it's the other form. There's the Chris Stapleton form.
Yes.
Both collected in Yunnan on the same mountains at about 13,000 feet. This one is supposedly slightly hardier and has seemingly proved slightly hardier.
Yes.
Probably okay at about certainly okay at -12. Possibly -14, 15, but I wouldn't want to test it to those temperatures.
I understand. But for people who want, we'll say, a more lusher, jungly or woodland type garden, if you want a bamboo that's not going to spread, like some of the ones that we'll see shortly, this, I mean, it doesn't get much more beautiful than that, does it? That colour of that blue, it's a stunner.
The other interesting thing about this form, which is, say, KR form as opposed to the CS form, is the new culm sheaths are a beautiful, deep maroon purple.
I can see at the base there,
They don't. These are late ones, so they don't look very good.
Don't have the same colours,
but in the spring, they are a really lovely colour.
Yes.
A really deep purple, and they've got lovely, very hairy, very hirsute. Look really nice.
I've got to say, I grow Yunnan 4, which is Lushuiensis, and that when the sheaths fall off, they've got a beautiful sort of pearlescent sheen to them, and it really is one of those things that you think bamboo, you think about the canes or the culms, but in reality there's so much more to the plant, and it's about seeing these fallen culm sheaths and that beautiful sort of gloss when the sun shines on them. It's about the noise, that this literally the paper makes, doesn't it, in the breeze. They really add so much to a garden, and there's definitely no reason to be afraid of them as long as you choose the right varieties. But on that note, we'll see further down the garden some of the ones that you grow here that are a little bit more we'll say adventurous, that's probably the word, but so, first we'll look in here,
so the other thing is, as the palms have grown tall, you can see there, it's a good example, I've now started to plant in, or have for some years started to plant in understory plants.
Yes.
Particularly I put in quite a few camellias, because I do like camellias and it gives you nice colour earlier in the year. Yeah. And then I'm also putting in a few hydrangeas now.
Like the
Hydrangea aspera there, which is a lovely plant. It's just getting going. It's been in a couple of years. It's grown about 2 feet this year. I'm sure it'll start to spread quite significantly. There's a Schefflera at the back, which is one of the Nova Scheffleras.
Oh, yeah, from Nick Mesa.
From Nick Mesa.
Pan Global.
And that's in a good position now. This is this lower part of the garden is very sunny. You can see there's a bit of a Virginia creeper.
Oh yeah, I do like that there, just a shot of autumn.
Yeah, going up through the Trachycarpus. That's one of the Trachycarpus we brought back from our honeymoon in 1988. A tiny seedling.
I know at this stage this is going to be a longer video, but I've got to say it's got to be eye-opening for a lot of people watching it, that just how big these Trachycarpus get. And I mean, it really is unreal when you're walking past something like this. I talk about underplanting when a plant's 6 foot high. These plants here are pushing sort of, 20 foot high maybe?
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, you can have so many different layers to planting like you have done. So they've got the bamboo, you've got the various Schefflera shrubs. Below them you planted hydrangeas. It really is such a lush jungle vibe, isn't it?
Yeah, the Trochodendron araloides in there, which is
like that,
a nice plant. And it mixes well with the Scheffleras and indeed the sort of contrasting leaf form of Camellias, really, the rounded shiny leaf of Camellias.
They've all got that sort of glossy look to them, haven't they? Like they all belong in a rainforest. So if I just sort of zoom out here, there isn't one single plant that jumps out at you that says I'm a specimen plant. I think the beauty of having so many similar and contrasting plants in the ground for so long is everything sort of meshes together, doesn't it? Everything flatters each other, and the overall look really is a natural calming vibe, which it really does look beautiful. But we'll head in further.
Okay.
Well, in fact, before we just nip into there, let's look at this palm, because this one is an absolute stunner, isn't it?
Yeah. Bought at a fete at a large house for £8.50. Probably about probably about 10 years ago as just a very small plant. And I thought, well, that looks a reasonable Trachycarpus. It didn't look really out of the ordinary.
No.
But I have to say, it's one of the best formed Trachycarpus I have.
We were discussing, and we think it's got some wacky blood in it, don't we?
Definitely.
Just for those really stiff leaves, but that really is a beauty. It almost has that sort of, that Copernicia, are they Copernicia? The more tropical palms that really have the finely, really divided leaves. It's a beauty.
Prochardia as well.
Yes.
It's a bit like that.
It really is a stunner. And just very quickly touching on fascicularias, we're both a fan of these. And here, you've got some grown here as bromeliads, epiphytic plants on your Trachycarpus. They look amazing. And then the ones in the ground, how long have these been in?
Probably about 15 or 18 years, probably. And they flower regularly in this time of the year. They're just
probably a little bit late
now.
in the year, because this is an October visit, a late October visit, but they still look just, we were saying earlier, we're both seeing the film Avatar. To me, plants like this with this shot of red, it really adds that sort of alien, otherworldly feel to your garden, and it sort of transports it from being a woodland garden to a full-on exotic paradise, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Behind is a camellia, which I've had for probably about 40 years, and moved it from Cambridge. My father bought it me. It's a very blousy pink, actually, but it's a lovely, and it flowers for probably 3 months of the year in the spring.
Yes.
It's a lovely backdrop, and as I say, I've mixed in camellias, quite a few camellias here. I've got about eight camellias in this space here, underneath the palms, really.
I know when you moved in, you started off with a pretty blank canvas for this garden, but I think it's really a great example for people who've just moved to a new garden, that you don't have to just rip everything out and replace it with tropical.
No.
To me, there's so many of these other camellia, the large leaf evergreen plants especially, that just fit in beautifully with an exotic garden. And whatever you've got, potentially you can work with it. And to me, a jungle garden, this is what it's about. It's such a variety of plants and heights, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I say, if I was given my time again, I would use more rhododendrons, I think. Wouldn't go wild.
No.
But I've introduced.
Would you class this as going wild? Some would say you've already gone pretty wild.
Probably the wrong use of the term there. But
I know what you mean.
But yes, the other thing which I will say is, of course, not everything. Many things are not successful. So you can see the stump there of a Chilean wine palm.
The Jubea chilensis,
which I bought many years ago from Mulu. And it's never been damaged really by the winter, but it's never grown very well. So I've actually hacked it back in disgust, because it was in
which again, those are supposedly very, very hardy, tough palm. I know I said that time and time again, but potentially it just doesn't suit your soil climate.
It just doesn't grow very fast.
No.
I've also had Bootia capitata. I've had quite a few. And although they survived with me, they never grew very well.
No.
So I might get two or three leaves if I was lucky in the summer. And in the end, I dug them out in disgust.
I completely understand. And there are a lot of plants, and I think sometimes these days people go off the hardiness figures as if it can take -12, it will grow in my garden.
Yeah.
And the reality is, there's so many other factors, soil, exposure, moisture, wind, that go into actually a plant that thrives into your garden. And what we're going to see as we head deep into the jungle now is an evolution. It's a plant that survived, isn't it? It's a plant that have battled through your tough Sheffield winters, and the plants that have persisted over the years, not just hardy, but tough in every meaning.
Bearing in mind we're nearly 500 feet up in the edge of the Pennines here, so it's not the warmest part of the UK.
No, and
it's also not the coldest. We're not at the bottom of a frost trap. But a frost pocket, but we get good movement down of air down.
Very good movement on windy days. Yes.
So it's quite a windy spot.
Yeah.
But I have to say that, as I say, probably in the 30 odd years that we've been here, -12, -13 is cold for that very bad winter. Is the coldest we've had so far. Touch wood.
Touch wood, definitely.
Global warming.
Anything can happen, can't it?
It's extreme.
Yes, this is it. And everyone's, well, not everyone, but as soon as there's a cold winter, a cold spell, everyone jumps in there and says, it's global warming, not happening, it's a load of nonsense. But the reality is that climate change can mean sudden and drastic swings in temperature, can't it? It can mean unpredictable weather patterns. And I think as we head through, we're really going to see some of the toughest plants that have...
Some nice...
this is a fantastic fern, isn't it?
This fern has gone everywhere. I've taken a lot out this year and given it to my friends.
Yes.
But, Blechnum chilensis, which I've had here since 1991, has literally spread all the way through.
It really is
and
lovely.
It's a lovely fern.
Yes.
It's a lovely fern.
I think I've got a small one at the back of a border somewhere, but nothing quite as impressive as this. And again, ferns, they instantly fit with the exotic tropical jungle vibe. They just go well with so many other plants. Wow.
A few other plants here, a lot of palms, a lot of
Yes.
trachys here. Some of them have been, I've taken stripped the trunk on that one there, but most of them are still remain in their natural state. And some of them have started from really very small plants, but are getting quite, some of these really thick trunks are coming on really well.
I mean, you can literally see on the ground there, can't you, all the germinating Trachycarpus seedlings.
Masses of seeds.
Hundreds and thousands of them, isn't there?
Yeah, huge
really
handfuls of seed. You can see those in front of you there, George, on that from this year on that trachy there. That's one of the female, and the male is just behind you there. But obviously both sexes well dispersed within this garden.
So I think really, to me, there's two take-home points here. Firstly, if you're new to growing a lot of these palms and exotics and you're worried that you might kill them, I think this really is proof that, in a Sheffield exposed garden, it's not about keeping them alive, it's the other way around, it's about thinning them out, isn't it? Because they're that prolific. And the other thing is, the way you've combined them in your garden, you've got that many in a small space. So if you planted these now, 1 foot tall, these ones here, and you put a photo in one of the groups, you probably get people saying they're too close together, they're going to slow each other down. But the reality is, as soon as they've trunked to this height, the overall look, it really is impressive jungle, incredible, overwhelming vibe. You wouldn't have got this just with 1 or 2, would you? You have to have that volume.
No. I mean, that's how it would be in nature. Trachycarpus germinate around the base of where the seeds fall.
Yes.
So you would have that situation in a natural Himalayan or other Chinese environment. There's a huge Schefflera at the back, which I think we've got.
We saw from the other side, didn't we?
Which the trunk is as thick as my thigh almost, and that's been there.
You can just about see it through there, but I'll show some clips of it from the other side. It really is amazing, and again, a nice little reminder to people that the new plants you've just bought that are a foot high that you're planting out, they're not just a little foliage plant, they are potentially a small tree essentially, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, that one has been there for a good 25 years. It's totally untouched by anything that Sheffield's thrown at it.
Yes.
And that's rhododendron, essentially what is the same as this. This is rhododendron, this is Schefflera rhododendronifolia.
Yes.
The other one is the same species, but the form is Schefflera, what was called Schefflera impressa.
Got you. I mean, Schefflera, they're a relatively new species, in terms of cultivation, aren't they? So there are going to be new forms brought out. There's going to be difference in naming, and
another point
I think they're lovely.
I'd make on these two here are only about 12 years old, so they've grown really quite quickly because they're up at they're up towards 12, 13 feet probably. Oh,
definitely, a true 12, 13 foot, yes.
So they are in full sun. They're slightly scorched by the 38 degrees we had last year.
Which really was an exceptional summer, wasn't it, 2022? Yes.
But one thing I will say is the leaf is rather large on these, and we do get a lot of southerly wind come through here up the valley side, and they actually do get damaged sometimes, particularly if it's in the early part of the year where they're forming. Yes. Where impressa is much more wind tolerant.
That's
it gets
interesting
the same
to know.
Wind, but it doesn't get any damage.
Got you. No, that's good to know, and it sort of ties in, not that specifically, but when I talk about Schefflera, it's not so much about winter care, overwintering, anything like that. It's all about siting them in a sheltered spot in the first place, isn't it? It's about keeping a plant happy. It's like we said earlier, improving the soil, a lot of moisture, nice bit of shelter from the really drying winds. If you can keep a plant happy and healthy, it can take a lot more cold, can't it?
You might be interested, although it's probably not going to be very easy for the camera. I'm amazed at the root on Schefflera rhododendronifolia. So these roots, it is a challenge for the camera.
Oh, there we go. Yes, I can see that. Wow.
And if you come here, George,
I can absolutely see that. Yeah, I can zoom in now.
If you look into there, that really is thick root.
Wow,
we're talking big root here.
That is a proper tree root, that, isn't it?
And that's coming out of a relatively small plant, which is to say about 12 to 15 feet tall.
That's a bit of an eye-opener, that, isn't it? Yes.
So I found roots right over the other there as well, further out. So they obviously are wide-spreading, large roots once they're established. And I think it makes them quite drought tolerant as well.
Definitely. Now that is a lovely plant. So heading through, we're now deep into the jungle, and this is one of the plants that it absolutely stands out, doesn't it? On a dull day like today, when it really is dark in here, you probably can't tell looking at the camera, but this plant really shines out. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a nice bamboo. Phyllostachys vivax.
Auriculis, isn't it?
Yeah.
One that I grow as well. And
yeah.
I remember seeing this on your Garden as Well section all those years ago about how you mound everything up under here, and it really sort of helps it thrive. I know we were discussing before we started filming, we've typically spent the whole morning walking around talking about your garden, haven't we? About how this plant is maybe just pushing past its best now, or needs a little bit of thinning out. But some of those new culms, I mean, for people wanting to grow bamboo, that's what they grow it for.
Absolutely.
Nearly coke hand-sized. It's just such a mighty impressive plant, isn't it?
Yeah. There's a whole lot of other things in there. There's a Mahonia lamarifolia there. That's been there a long time. Just sort of poking in amongst other things. I've got quite a lot of Mahonia. I think they're very lovely plants. The Mahonia japonica is a fantastic plant.
Yeah, I've got to say at one point I was less inclined to like the more wiry, sort of gangly, spiky ones.
Yeah.
But they are growing in me, and I think when you see them in an environment like this, you know, reaching up above your head with the Trachycarpus, we're not used to seeing tropical gardens where you can look up and everything just wraps around you, and they absolutely fit in. It's all about that variety of foliage, and again, they've got that shiny, beautiful texture to them, haven't they?
Yep.
So, I mean, this bamboo, again, this is one we need to talk about. Is this the same as the one before?
This is Semiarundinaria fastuosa, yes.
Yes.
A nice plant. It's not the viridiform, which is, as far as I know, it's not. It's not. I don't think the difference between the standard and the viridiform is that much.
No.
But I think that's just the basic form. It's been there probably a good 15 years. But it's 24, probably 24 feet tall. No, probably more than that, 25, 26 feet tall.
I'm going to say, if anyone's watching this thinking, why can't we see the tops of the plants? It's because you can't. Unless I had a drone, which I know you can fly around here anyway, you literally wouldn't see the tops of these. They are absolutely just ginormous, aren't they, towering over us.
Under very ideal conditions, Semiarundinaria will run. Easy to control.
Definitely, unlike some of the Chimona bambusa tumidicinoda, which we'll see shortly.
So this is, as George says, Chimona bambusa tumidicinoda.
Catchy name. Or walking stick bamboo, to give it its easy name. Yes.
A lovely bamboo.
Yes.
Doesn't reach good proportions here. It goes for about 18, 20 feet in its right environment. The culms can be nearly as thick as a broom handle in the right environment.
Yes.
Too dry here most summers, and not very dry at the moment, having had about 5 inches of rain in the last
we had about 5 inches yesterday, didn't we?
But it's a lovely bamboo, and it enhances or gives complement to a tropical effect.
Yes. So as well as this video in this garden providing a good bit of escapism, I think it's a great opportunity to show people some of the different bamboos that I haven't talked about on my channel.
Okay.
Some of the bamboos I don't think get talked about enough. Everyone knows the really big timber bamboos like Vivax auriculis. I mean, that's why you grow this, isn't it? Just those huge canes. But there's a lot of more interesting Himalayan clumping bamboos, some really beautiful forms with smaller leaves, isn't there? So can you tell me more as we head through about some of the bamboos you grow?
This is a classical thug, Sassa palmata, which, because the garden's very dry, is actually quite well contained. Having said that, this year, nearly all that growth is this year's growth, because I cut it back and we've had a wet summer, relatively wet summer. It actually grows through the middle of the beech hedge, So
once it's in that hedge, it's in there, isn't it?
It's an incredibly tough bamboo.
Tough's one word for it. I mean, you are literally playing with fire growing plants like that, aren't you?
But it's a beautiful bamboo in the sense that it's very tropical. You can look at those leaves.
Yes.
I mean, that's fantastic. You would think that was a tender plant.
I mean, better. With that helicopter going overhead, we could literally be in some...
we could be in South Vietnam.
We certainly could be, I was trying to avoid any war references, but we could be in some tropical jungle climate.
I didn't mean to do
that. Oh, no, it's fine. I'll leave it in.
We talk about Jimi Hendrix.
It really is a beautiful bamboo, and probably a take-home lesson is, if the bamboo is called Sassa or Pseudosassa, don't plant it unless you're ready for some real adventures trying to contain it.
So here in a pot we have another another Schefflera macrophylla, or
Yes.
microphylla, which will probably get planted out next summer. It's in
Yeah.
quite a small pot.
It's a
Had it for
lovely
couple
plant
of
though,
years.
isn't it? Just look at that crocodile. That
Yeah.
really is incredible. I do like that. I've got to say, I've
Yeah.
got a couple of metal dinosaurs in my garden, and
Yeah.
you know, everyone has their own version of character, but that really is impressive.
Yeah.
It's massive.
Yeah, it likes it there. It comes
Yes.
out, it gets covered in the winter. So we've got a number of bamboos in here.
So the
Anyway,
Phyllostachys japonica at the back there, isn't there, with the big
Phyllostachys
leaves
japonica,
there?
Yeah, that was cut right down
Yes.
last year. Let some more light in. It's just come straight back up again.
Yes.
We got Chimona bambusa quadrangularis here,
Yes.
which you see at Heligan at its best. It's
Oh.
all over Heligan.
Yeah.
There's pathways cut through it. Goes to about 15, 18 feet. It's actually a really nice bamboo. It's not very hardy, but it's been here for probably 15, 18 years.
Yeah.
But hiding most of the time.
Yeah,
And then
sensibly
suddenly-
sighted. If it can survive
Yeah.
here in your Sheffield garden
Yeah.
for that amount of time,
Yeah.
I would say for most people, bar an exceptional winter, that's going to be hardy,
Yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah, and it suddenly started to revive itself, or to come to life.
Yes.
The last 2 years, so it's running through here and it's
Yes.
coming up here.
So-
So I'm going to let it do it.
Yes, that's definitely a theme of your garden, isn't it?
I have
Yeah.
taken that as a sort of an axiom for most of what I'm
Yes.
planting here. You can see
Fascicularia there.
Fascicularia flowering
That
on the top
beautiful
of the wall.
shot
That's
of
been-
red.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
been there for about 15 years.
I mean, when people talk about, you know, a tropical or jungle garden, to me, this view has it all. So you've got the towering Trachycarpus there. I mean, they're massive, aren't they? They're
There's
huge.
20 odd
Yeah.
feet of trunk there.
Yes, I can't even see the tops of them from here. And
Yeah.
we've got the beautiful yellows of the Vivax bamboo. We've got big leaves of the Schefflera that look otherworldly. And then we've got the Fascicularia bringing the colour in the middle there. So a tropical or jungle garden, it's not just about a summer display, is it? When you have this kind of look and this effect,
Yeah.
this is something that really persists through the year, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, on a cold winter's day,
Yes.
when the huge oak tree here, which shades the garden for half
Yes.
the day, has shed its leaves, the winter sun actually shines
Oh,
up through
yeah.
the garden, you know,
Yeah.
at the best time of the day, and catches these bamboos.
Oh,
And I
I
often
bet it's
will sit
beautiful.
in there. I've got a little seat
Yes.
with a cup of tea
Yes.
amongst the
I don't blame
canes,
you.
and it's lovely.
I've got to say, I was
Really
half
nice.
thinking of coming to your garden on a winter's day because
Yeah.
everything looks so completely evergreen and exotic, even in
Yeah.
December.
Yeah.
But today, you know, a nice gloomy autumnal day, it really is incredible just to escape into a garden like this.
Big Trachycarpus still behind you there.
Ah, yes.
Much higher up, going
Oh,
way,
yeah.
way up.
Yeah.
You
Try
can't
and show
see it
people that
'cause of
one,
the
yes.
Borindas.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, look at all that with all the.
Sorry about that, George. Bit
all the
wet
leaves.
there.
Yes.
But that's been there. That was planted as a tiny Trachycarpus 30 years ago, that one.
Wow. And just to show people quickly, you talked about this being a running bamboo, and
Yeah.
what running bamboo do is, here's one clump there, which appears to be like a clump, but then it's popped up there, and then it's popped up there, and it's probably going to continue this marching down your garden, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, well,
but you're not entirely worried about that, are you?
No, I'm not worried. So
No.
I deliberately, so in this part of the garden, I
Yes.
deliberately picked running bamboo. So
It's really dark in here, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is proper jungle, this.
yeah. So it will be lighter when the oak tree's lost its
Got you.
leaves.
Yes.
And in the summer, the sun shines down here in the afternoons and looks really nice through the bamboo.
I do love with the sun when it just shines through, it just picks
yeah.
up the movement, doesn't it? It's beautiful.
I've got a Borinda there, which isn't a runner, but
Yes.
and a Borinda here, the original KR 3968
Yes.
again.
So another blue bamboo here.
And that's a really more mature specimen.
Yeah, and even though it's a clumper, you still get some good culm
Yeah.
or cane size on it, don't you?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a beauty,
Yeah.
that
And
one.
you can see, I mean, the blue of the colours from this year are really lovely. You
Yes.
see there. I mean,
Yeah, as you take
it's
that away.
a lovely
So that
plant.
is
It's a lovely plant.
That's the new blue there, isn't it, as we zoom
Yeah.
in? I mean, that is just incredible. And I've got to say, I don't know the technical term off the top of my head, but these bandings almost appear gold, you know,
The
real.
nodes.
No, do you know what? I was looking for a more scientific word than nodes, but
yeah,
yes. Yeah.
I think. Well, I mean, you know, I've always known it as nodes.
Yes.
In the Bamboo Society, we are fairly, simple country folk. We've always
Yeah.
known them as nodes.
Yes.
So
I was more meaning the actual band around the node is like a beautiful
Oh,
sort of,
right, okay.
almost like a decorative, like a ring round it, isn't
Yeah.
it? It really is beautiful.
Yeah.
But I mean, this area here, it is completely enveloped by bamboo,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Your garden gets a little bit wilder, to say the least.
So this is Bashania fargesii. which is said to be one of the main food sources of the panda.
Oh wow!
So it's a true montane bamboo,
yes,
growing between about 1,500 feet to about 6,000 feet.
Yes,
in southern southeastern China, mountainous regions where there is huge mixed forest, and this plant grows either amongst the forest or actually has single stands in higher altitude, where the plants are actually quite more stunted than they are here.
Ah, okay, that's interesting. Yes.
The interesting thing is, because it covers such huge areas, and these were original areas where pandas were and still are.
Yes.
Very low population density, though.
Unfortunately, yes.
The pandas tend to overwinter in the valleys where it's slightly warmer, although they get -20, they can get -20.
Oh yeah, I can believe it, yes.
And snow, but the snow is usually quite light. They have relatively dry winters and relatively warm, moist, wet summers. So this bamboo starts to shoot further down the mountain earlier. The pandas move up the mountain with the shooting season of the bamboos.
That's
so
interesting,
it actually, and the new shoots are relatively nutrient rich compared with the paucity of nutrients.
I wouldn't fancy eating that now.
So they probably get about 5 months feeding out of this bamboo.
So I won't say it's a symbiotic relationship, because the bamboo doesn't gain much from the panda, but it's definitely one of those sort of natural evolutions. And to me, something you've identified there is something we haven't really talked about much, which is elevation. A lot of the plants in your garden, they come from Asia, rather than like genuinely tropical areas. They come from places that do see a severe and often significant amount of cold, snow, frost and ice. But the crucial thing is, a lot of the plants that we grow in our gardens, a lot of the new collections of bamboo, Schefflera and other exotics, they come from quite high up, don't they? And that really is a way, that provenance, that's what hopefully gives them a chance of survival here in the UK, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean this bit of the garden is not only is it shaded for half the day, but it's also very windy in winter. So the wind hammers across here.
Yes,
we have a lot of snow in Sheffield. I say it's not the coldest place, but it's probably one of the snowiest cities, or if not the snowiest city in the UK.
Yes,
12 inches of snow is not that unusual. We had 12 inches, 14 inches possibly this last March.
Wow, yeah.
Whereas Leeds were going, well, we had a lot of snow.
Oh, we hardly had anything.
Too, it was we nearly had 3 inches.
Yes.
Well, not the case here. So this bamboo runs.
Yeah.
So it literally from one single plant, it's gone all the way down there. I take it out. It's gone all the way over there. As far as we can see, it's gone up into this top garden.
It really is difficult, even with quite a wide-angle lens, to convey the sort of scale.
And it's tall.
And it's so dark in here, isn't it?
We're talking 25, 30 feet tall. It's not a hugely thick culm, but it's a very tough culm once it's there. Once it's hardened off.
Yes, unlike the vivax, which is a very thin wall, isn't it?
Yeah, and that snaps off in the snow.
I mean, people probably won't be able to appreciate just how dark it is in here as I'm filming, but I mean, look, that is a beautiful bamboo, one there. Yeah.
So we have another bamboo here, which is again a KR introduction. KR 5600, which is a Tibetan bamboo.
Yes.
It's called the giant bamboo. There's new culms which have come up this year, which are probably, they're good 30 feet, I would say. They're way up there.
That is huge.
It needs more space. I probably will clear some space around it.
Yes.
The culms will grow bigger than this, not hugely amount thicker, but this sort of perhaps a bit. You can get culms up to probably 1.5 inches, bits perhaps not 2 inches.
Still a big bamboo for anyone who hasn't seen these plants before.
But it's a very tall bamboo, and it has a lovely deep green large leaf actually as well.
Yes, I do like the variety of the larger leaves against some of the smaller ones. And looking up, the camera's probably brightening it quite a bit more than it actually is. But I just love the view. It's just so peaceful, tranquil on today. Anyway, when the wind's above 10 mile an hour where I am, imagine it's a hurricane here, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be.
Yes.
We're on the edge of the Pennines and we get this foam effect and we get this eddy as you come across the Pennines.
Got you.
But even in summer, more so in summer very often.
Yes.
So this runs through, and there's a Borinda here which is very vigorous. And there's a couple of more smaller trachyes I put in here, which I try and get let have a certain amount of sun to keep them growing well.
So something I'd like to touch on in this area. I mean, firstly, you get on well with your neighbours, and as we've probably sort of glossed over, there's a couple of occasions where you've had to remove certain plants and control others. But do you use any bamboo root barrier?
No.
No.
So I don't. But I mean, I'm a bit of a cowboy.
Yeah.
But having said that, it is important to get on with your neighbours.
Yes.
And I am very fortunate that I have very good neighbours
Who appreciate and enjoy this. Yes.
Well, and they're very. I appreciate how tolerant they are. Seriously.
Yeah.
And I let them know. I mean, I tell them thank you very much for being so tolerant, because clearly it can be very difficult, and it is a difficult. It can be a difficult situation. You know, because not everybody wants a jungle growing next to them.
No. I understand that.
Some people don't mind a jungle growing next to them. What I would say is these gardens have always been sort of woodland gardens. They were once woodland.
Yes.
They're long gardens. There's a lot of big trees around. So
yes.
my garden, although it does stand out a bit as being quite
from Google Earth, probably. Yes. Yeah.
But there are other big trees all around.
Yes.
So it's not totally discordant with everything else.
And this is something that I've sort of subconsciously or maybe consciously tried to incorporate in my garden. So I can see your big oak tree across there. I'll put another clip over the top of this. That creates a lot of shade. My garden, although I grow a lot of overtly tropical plants, the whole garden is pretty much shady apart from the far end. So I've got a big cherry tree, there was a big poplar leaning over the garden. And if you have that kind of shade, you almost want to lean to this kind of jungle aesthetic, don't you? Yeah. These plants are naturally thriving in a more sheltered, shady spot. And although, shade really is, pushing things at this end of the garden, I think, like you say, you have to lean into it, don't you, and really go for these plants.
This is a lovely plant. This is Trochodendron araloides again.
Yeah.
But it's a lovely form. It's a very dark green form. You get a lot of.
Yes.
You don't often get it quite as dark green as this, and it's not just because it's in shade. It's up in the sun there at the top, right at the top there.
Are you sure?
It's the same colour.
Yes.
And it's been here since 1991. I bought it as
so again, 30 years in the ground.
Yeah. And all these conifers, which I probably shouldn't have planted, I put in to make windbreaks. So we've got this cover around us.
Yes.
Two very large tree ferns, which you've probably taken pictures of. These have been here 20 odd years.
So to me, I'll be honest with you.
It's grown from there when it went in.
This one here, after 20 years in the ground in this lush damp garden, I don't think I've seen longer fronds than this outside of Cornwall. It absolutely looks at home, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It really is a beauty. And in fact, we'll head round here and just show people.
Going through there, you can see.
You've got Mahonia there. We've got all kinds of different Fatsia japonicas. You've got a Calopanax here. It really is just a proper exotic glade. You've
got the standard Fatsia polycarpa with a green, I think it's called green fingers or something.
Yes.
And this is the original Edward Needham form here, which is a much finer leaf.
Yeah, more divided. Yes. They're both
nice
beauties.
leaf.
It's nice seeing them together actually, just to compare the difference. I mean, they're both nice. This one's got a more sort of rounded look to it, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas the Needham form is definitely a lot more sort of.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, it looks more like fingers to me. But anyway, that's.
And there's even a different one over there. I actually got another large form here with a big leaf, which I just planted out, which I actually got from the nursery at Tregrayan this summer.
Which is a fantastic woodland exotic garden, isn't it?
Cornwall, yeah.
But the reason I brought people around here is to show them this. I mean, these are last year's fronds here. Not exaggerating, we're probably talking over 2 metres in length. These are probably 2.5 metres plus, some probably even 3 metres. It really is just such a beautiful plant, and you've given it plenty of room here to really show off, unlike some of mine. I really do think it looks impressive.
Another large one here, which you can see,
Wow. Yeah, I mean, the fronds are just so long and so healthy compared to other gardens that I've seen, but I guess that's partly down to the time and partly down to the conditions you've created here, isn't it?
I mean, it's probably the sort of conditions you get in high mountainous regions in New South Wales, where they're, although it's colder here in the winter, but potentially
on the edge of their
colder,
climate, yes.
But they will be in quite relatively cool areas with high humidity particularly.
Yes, and this summer, high humidity rainfall has definitely been a theme. And I mean, looking at the grounds here, I know you said you're going to tidy up some of these eucalyptus, so I'm not focusing just on that, but this, when I talk about mulching, I generally put a lot of the soft garden matter down at the end of summer, the cannas, the banana leaves, that kind of thing. But here you've put everything down, haven't you? So we've got eucalyptus strips of bark there, Trachycarpus leaves. It really is a proper jungle floor, and this is all about the soil, the microbiology. it really is amazing to see it actually thriving.
Yeah, the blackbirds have a field day here.
Oh,
They
I can
love
imagine.
It. They're digging all the time. Badgers come in here at night, so they are a bit of a nuisance. Some of the sort of disruption here is badgers.
Yes.
I've tried to sort of tidy it up a little bit. It's just stumping it in where the badgers have been digging holes. But the soil is good, even though we're under a massive eucalyptus.
Now, this is one of the trees that I remember seeing on your Gardener's World section, and to be honest, from this angle here, I can hardly show the size of this.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of eucalyptus, but I will preface any advice
I can walk in here, George,
if you've got the
and show
space.
you. So we're talking, we're talking this sort of size, you know. This was started from seed in about 1980, 89, 88, I think.
So this tree is literally the same age as me. It's 34 years old, potentially 35. But this eucalyptus, they're not known for hanging around. This one it's huge, isn't it? It really is such an
it's a classical
plant.
snow gum, but I had a friend from Australia visit, and she said, well, we have these obviously all over, and we've got huge numbers of species, but the standard snow gum, she says, you rarely see. She said, I haven't seen them as big as this, probably because the soils are much drier, and from the relatively dry part of Australia. Obviously the montane species will be bigger, but then of course they're often stunted a little bit because they're growing in very exposed poor soils on high mountains.
Yes, and I think that's probably another thing with a lot of these plants. It's all right to say eucalyptus come from Australia where there's no water, yuccas grow in Mexico, but we have the ability here in the UK to actually get some of them to actually grow better, don't we, with extra moisture. And also it doesn't mean you can just leave them in the ground and not water them. You have to give plants a bit of care while they're small. But the reality is that some of them can actually grow just as well as in the habitats like these tree ferns, and in some cases like the eucalyptus and certain yuccas, potentially even better with the extra moisture.
You won't be able to see this with the camera, but this is all new roots here.
Oh, you can definitely see now it's coming to focus. You can see there's definitely the new sort of like brown sort of light brown tips to them.
It's all over. It's all through here and around the side. It's because it's been moist for so long that they then start to thicken out. And of course, in classical in places like Cornwall, near streams where you've got high humidity for long parts of the year, the chunks get thicker and thicker and thicker. You end up with a really huge Dixonia trunk.
I went to Cornwall for my 30th, and just going around Helligan, Treba, seeing just the size of some of the tree ferns. They're literally, like we said, the buttresses on the bottom of the trunks. They are the size of actual trees, aren't they? It really is impressive, and I haven't seen them really thicken up to the extent that yours have really outside of Cornwall. So again, testament to your conditions, the time spent in the ground, and probably really a lot of your attention on the soil, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you can see this. So this is a bit of Phyllostachys dulcis, that's the cane which popped up this year. It's up at about 30 feet, isn't it?
Yes.
And the main clump is there, of course.
Yes.
Which has been there quite a long time.
So this
gets fed a lot because it's quite a bit of extra water because it's quite dry up here. Well, it's very dry in many summers underneath these eucalypts.
Soft garden matter, you can put it at the base of your bamboo, particularly the timber bamboos, and it really helps to shield the roots and rhizome from any severe cold, but more importantly, I think in our UK climate, it traps in the moisture, it improves the structure of the soil, and it really gives that bamboo the best soil environment to really grow and reach to the sky, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But one crucial thing I will say is Phyllostachys are runners. Phyllostachys, it has the potential to run. If you grew this plant for maybe 10 years, it might form a clump and you might think that's a clumping bamboo. But then one summer or 1 year, it can suddenly throw up something like this, a not insignificant culm.
There were several others came up as well, but I took them out.
Yes, so it's something to be aware of. Like we said in the video, Sassa, Pseudosassa and Phyllostachys, to choose some of the main ones, running bamboos, really contain them if you've got a smaller garden, or if you've got the space to let them go for it, then expect some adventures. And then the Fargesias and Borindas are the clumpers, aren't they? There's all the others we haven't spoken about.
Probably the biggest runner and the most aggressive that's hardy of all is Bashania fargesii.
Right, okay,
so that really does run.
Yes.
And but it's a lovely bamboo, but I would not recommend it for a normal garden.
No, so with your garden, you've not used any rhizome barrier around. I mean, looking back through there, you've got a clear area of your garden, which, you have given over to the bamboo, haven't you?
Yeah.
And everything sort of, runs into each other's clumps. It's just popping up everywhere. That's the look that you wanted, and that's the area for them. But if you didn't want that kind of really, sprawling jungle effect, you can use rhizome barrier. It's well worth putting the effort in to actually digging it into the ground. It's expensive, costs more than the actual plants, but if you don't put it in, you will regret it, won't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
No. So here we've got, this is an alocasia, this one.
Yep.
I think this is something, again, we were speaking about earlier, about how we're both not moving away from a tropical garden, but you appreciate the work involved in overwintering huge plants like this, don't you? It's definitely a lot more labour intensive than the sort of more exotic evergreen jungle garden, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's in a relatively small pot.
Yes.
They're very tough, but obviously they're not frost hardy at all.
No. So
I need probably even in the next week to
Yes.
put it up and drag it back down the garden and put it in my conservatory for the winter.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a nice plant. Sort of taro, isn't it?
Yeah, elephant's ear, yeah.
And it looks good in this sort of amongst bamboo,
Definitely.
and next to a tropical hut.
Yes.
It's the right
Which
sort of
is
setting.
currently sort of closed off,
There's another polycarpa there with a much thicker leaf.
that's interesting, yes.
Yeah, so that's the full contrast, really.
So this is something I've talked about in my videos before, with the alocasia in particular. Having just one really sort of lush tropical or exotic plant, it just completes the image, doesn't it? So people are used to seeing trees. I mean, admittedly that eucalyptus is certainly a statement piece, but people are used to seeing evergreen shrubs with glossy leaves, but suddenly you put one alocasia in or have a big tetch panax or something that you don't see every day, and it feels like a tropical jungle, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and here you could literally be anywhere in the world looking up.
Yeah.
It really is an incredible environment. I've got to say though, that eucalyptus, I don't think I'll be able to see it really on the camera, but it is a monster.
There is one you can see, of course, the one at the back there, which we'll move on to in a minute.
Let's head to the back then, if you want.
So we passed the...
Although, actually, let's just have a quick look at this.
So you can look at these columns here.
Yes.
As I say, this is dulcis. The only thing I would say about this is there is some intermittent flowering going on here.
Right, okay, yes.
Non-gregarious flowering, but it's been flowering a little bit on the odd cane for the last 5 years. I'm just hoping we don't go into a gregarious flowering mode and it then curls up its
and you've lost the plant in your
dies.
garden.
I'm hoping it just eventually is a passing phase.
For people wanting a big bamboo, admittedly it's taken a lot of time, hasn't it, to get here, but that really is impressive. It's not quite Coke can size, but not far off, is it?
No. I think in the right place with more heat, as long as it has a good amount of water, you can get some really big canes on it. I know someone in Oxford who has this plant, Phyllostachys dulcis, with canes which are the same as thickness as a soup can. He's put them next to one another for comparison, and they compare very, very well.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, George, right at the end of the garden here, we've got Eucalyptus glaucescens, which is planted as a very small eucalypt. I would actually, encourage people to plant eucalypts as small as possible. Almost.
Yes, which is crucial.
12 inches, 10 inches, 18 inches, because the problem is that in our rich, wet soils, they tend to grow top very quickly and are more prone to outgrow their root systems and then topple over. So stick them in small so they get a good root system established.
And this is actually, I've planted a couple of glaucescens myself, the Guttega form, and I know they're not a plant that everyone loves, and to a certain extent they're going to steal a lot of the moisture from the soil, but to me you can't have a jungle garden without a jungle. You need to have some trees, and as long as you've got the space, eucalyptus are phenomenal. I mean, I love the different sort of variations of colour on the bark. I love the form of them, the way they're actually quite dappled shade. They're very sparse, aren't they? But this is an example of how big they get. And going back to what you're saying about starting small, I think you can start them a little bit larger if they come from an air pot. It's worth checking out hardy eucalyptus. But the reason why you don't grow plants like this from large sizes at garden centres, if they're in conventional pots, without any holes in them, is because the roots in a pot literally wrap around and they're sort of locked in place. You plant that in the ground, the roots aren't going to spread out as they should do, the tree won't be anchored, and it's just going to rocket away in our rich, wet soils, like you say, and create a problem very quickly.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That really is a beauty. And
there's a couple of nice camellias under here. Camellias Adolf Alderson, deep red, covered in bud here, even despite the fact that it's in quite a bit of dappled shade or even quite deep shade at certain times of the day.
I'd say it's definitely heading towards deep shade,
And it's a dry place as well.
Yes.
although I do put the other can of water on it in the summer.
Yes, to keep it lush and healthy.
Yeah.
It looks perfectly at home here, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think it mixes nicely. It's nice to see bright red in amongst the green.
I can imagine.
In the spring when everything else is still, still just getting going in lots of other gardens. You've got colour and you've still got greenery here because it's basically
which
evergreen.
I think is definitely something that needs to come into more tropical gardens. It's that seasonal interest, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, in autumn you've got your Virginia creeper, really giving that sort of splash of colour, and then in spring, like you say, the camellias, and that's probably one thing I've taken from your garden is I've been to a few different gardens recently. I've filmed different videos and I've seen a variety of different tropical styles, exotic styles, but to me your garden really is a garden for all the seasons, isn't it? An actual jungle environment.
That's the sort of thing I've tried to create, George. I mean, I want somewhere to go and sit and look round in the middle of winter. I want something that's green, even in what is quite a relatively, can be quite a severe environment sometimes in winter. With a lot
as in
of
Sheffield in general.
Wind,
Now I understand. I mean, firstly, if you did it again, would you do anything differently in terms of your garden, the design of it and the plants?
I think possibly. I think I'd use more large-leaf rhododendrons.
Yes.
Particularly some of the things like singogrande, which I say I've got now, but they're obviously coming quite late into my life and into the garden. And there's quite a lot of other large-leaf rhododendrons, and also some beautiful rhododendrons with fantastic indimentums. So the leaf colour.
There's a lot more to plants than just the tops of the leaves.
I might do slightly less bamboos. I don't know. The problem is space. If I had more space, then you've got a
which is the perpetual gardener battle. Isn't it? Really, it's always the way. Are there any plants other than the rhododendrons that you wish you'd got in the ground earlier? So, I mean, I guess the thing with a lot of these Scheffleras is they've only really relatively recently become available. You know, but.
I think yes. I think there's probably quite a few more Scheffleras coming online now. I do think they mix very well with this sort of planting, but of course they would be found in the natural habitat amongst bamboo and palms. They're all sort of China Himalayan plants. Vietnam, obviously Schefflera macrophylla comes from Vietnam. Well, it's not just Vietnam, but that's the main place. Don't regret planting lots of Trachycarpus. I'm very pleased to have those. I just happen to be a fan of Trachycarpus, but I think they create a scene, an atmosphere, a structure which is difficult to get with many other plants.
I agree that they're definitely, I think atmosphere really is the word. I mean, when you look up, people are used to seeing one Trachycarpus, by itself, aren't they, in the middle of a lawn or, as part of a, tropical bed. But when you see them grouped together in varying different sizes, the overall effect, I keep using the word genuine and naturalistic and jungle, but it really does feel like somewhere, like a proper environment, doesn't it?
I think we've probably got 35 or so pretty mature Trachycarpus in this garden. Countless small Trachycarpus.
Oh, yes.
All over the place.
Yes, countless is the word.
I certainly don't regret that.
No.
Having all those. I probably, in terms of other palms, I've got it in the front garden, Camellias humilis cerifera.
Yes.
I think cerifera, the blue form from North Africa, is a really nice plant, and the two things in its favour, not only is its form, it's got very nice sharp spines on it, which are even sharper and more vicious, but look nice actually, because they're quite dark coloured than the standard Camellias humilis, but it has obviously blue leaves, bluish leaves.
Yes.
I think it's slightly hardier, and it certainly seems to be hardier here in the worst winter.
Yeah, that seems to be generally accepted.
By that 2011 or 2012 winter.
Yes.
And also, it's obviously very drought tolerant, but it also makes a really nice plant. And the main thing I think is that it doesn't seem to get the rust that many of the Camellias humilis got. And I've been to Kew, and I can see the plants where there's lots of Camellias humilis planted amongst cerifera forms, and you can see that the standard form is often covered in rust. whereas the Semiariferas are, occasionally they're touched with some rust, but
they're more
generally
resilient.
speaking, they're pretty free of it.
I've got to say, I do agree there. I've planted a couple in my garden this spring. I got them from Big Plant Nursery. I think they're 20% off, and they weren't expensive. They were 10 or 15 litre pots, around £30. So these days,
That's really good.
A good price to start with. And I think really to summarise this video, if there's probably a few tips for people wanting to create a jungle garden, or indeed any kind of exotic tropical garden in a colder part of the UK, I think firstly, like we said, the Trachycarpus, they're a staple plant. Don't just stop at one or two, and don't assume you have to plant big. I think really, with a bit of patience, and in the scheme of things, they get big in just 10 or 15 years, not even 10 years.
Yeah.
They size up really quickly.
Yeah.
They're beautiful plants, even when they're small like this here, and they're really a great investment. However your garden chooses to evolve, whether you go full jungle like this or lean into a more open tropical theme, getting a Trachycarpus in the ground is never a bad idea. And when you see them growing up like this, I mean, £2.50, £7.50, whatever the price you pay for yours.
£2.50.
Yeah, it really is such an amazing plant that absolutely delivers on that. So those going in the ground first off, get some structure in, you won't regret it. I think the second tip is, don't be afraid to, diversify your plant choices. If you like rhododendrons, camellias, if you really want this kind of lush evergreen look through the year, I think there's so many different varieties here, and there's even more that you wish you planted, isn't there?
Yes, oh, absolutely, yeah. One of the things I do like, and I've got one by the side of the house, is Magnolia delavayi.
Yes.
Now that is supposedly quite tender, but I think it's hardy to -12.
Yes.
It won't like cold, drying winds, but if it's in a shelter position, I think it will probably take -12 with very little damage.
Yeah.
It's never been damaged really by weather here, but it's against the side of the house, and it grows at a phenomenal rate. And in fact, I probably need to almost take it out because it's grown.
Yes,
so
it's got
big.
to that point, hasn't it? It's got to that point.
A big tree. But I think I would plant delavayi in the open. It would probably get damaged by the heavy snow we get here, but it'd be worth it because it's just such a lovely magnolia.
Yes, beautiful big leaves on it, definitely. And that probably neatly ties in with my third and probably final tip for people creating this look. It's really, you don't have to research every plant you buy. I think we're all open to a good impulse buy, aren't we? But it's all about having a rough idea of what plants will grow into. And I know we've both talked about plants that we've had to move and take out over the years, due to them getting too big for the space. But ultimately, you need to know when you're planting a Schefflera, it's not going to stay, although you might buy it the same size as that fern, it's not going to stay that size. And that Schefflera naturally wants to grow up through the canopy and create almost a small tree like this. So it's important to not only choose the right spot to look after the plant, but the right spot where it can grow into its adult form, and you appreciate it as part of your garden, not have to battle with it. So really, I think, Simon, this has been an eye-opener, not just for people watching, but also for myself. So thank you very much for showing me around the garden. Really appreciated it. Thank you very much for your time. And I'd love to come back some point maybe and look into your conservatory, maybe the front garden as well, because there's even more exotic beauties in there, isn't there?
George, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Simon.
Great pleasure. Learned a lot from you too, mate.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Likewise. Thanks for your time, Simon. We'll see you soon. Cheers.